Tonight, we're tracing how Christmas Day quietly became the NBA's unofficial holiday, why the schedule feels inevitable, why the games fit the living room, and how one tradition locked into place. If you enjoy calm sports stories to drift off to, subscribe and settle in. In this story, we're not just talking about games. We're talking about why basketball fits December 25th so cleanly, the timing, the TV window, the way the sport welcomes people drifting in and out of the room. By the end, the tradition will feel almost inevitable. Chapter 1. The perfect day to be home. Christmas is already a schedule. The morning is personal, the middle of the day is communal, and the evening is whatever is left after food, gifts, and small talk. That middle stretch is where the NBA lives. You don't have to go out to watch it. You don't have to plan a whole night around it. Basketball can just be on, like heat in events or music in another room. The sport fits the day because it doesn't demand the day. That is the first secret of Christmas basketball. It's background friendly, but it still feels important when you look up. A game can sit under a conversation, then suddenly turn into the conversation. One run of threes, one chase down block, one little burst of noise from the living room, and heads turn without anyone having to announce it. The second secret is timing. Basketball doesn't need darkness. It looks good in daylight. Hardwood, jerseys, the clean geometry of a court. It reads clearly, even when you're half paying attention. You can glance at the screen and understand the entire situation in 1 second. Score, clock, spacing, the shape of the possession. Christmas is also one of the rare days when everyone's kind of home is true at the same time. Different jobs, different shifts, different routines. Normally, it scatters people. On December 25th, the scatter becomes a pile. The NBA benefits from the pile. When the league puts games on Christmas, it's not just chasing viewers. It is attaching itself to a feeling people already have. The feeling of being together, even if together means in the same house, doing different things. Someone is in the kitchen. Someone is on the floor building something with tiny screws. Someone is checking a group chat. The screen becomes a shared object even when attention is divided. Basketball is unusually good at handling divided attention because its story comes in bursts. There are breaks. There are timeouts. There are quarters. The game arrives in segments, which makes it easy to enter and exit without feeling lost. You can miss 3 minutes and still find your way back. You can go refill a drink and return to a familiar scene. Players lining up at the free throw line, coaches pointing, the same 5 names you already know. That matters on a day when attention is constantly interrupted. Someone is checking the oven. Someone is answering a FaceTime call. Someone is stepping outside for a quick photo in the snow. Someone is searching for scissors because the tape is winning. A sport that punishes distraction will lose people on Christmas. A sport that tolerates distraction can settle in. Football asks for a long, continuous commitment. It's beautiful, but it is heavy. The moments are separated by resets, and the resets invite you to leave the room at the wrong time. Basketball asks for something lighter, a steady flow that can be watched at full focus or at gentle focus. The game keeps moving, and yet it keeps repeating, which is comforting. Possession after possession, the same shapes appear. It becomes easy to follow in a half-dream state. There is also the length. A Christmas gathering has its own rhythm. Short rituals, long pauses, short rituals again. Basketball sits inside that pattern. A single game is long enough to matter, but not so long that it becomes the entire day. And on Christmas, it is rarely just one game. The NBA stacks them. One ends, another begins. You can arrive late and still catch the good one. You can leave early and still feel like you participated. That stacking is important because it turns watching into a menu. You don't have to commit to every minute. You can sample. You can vote with your feet. If the first matchup is quiet, you let it play. If the second gets tense, the room leans in. If the late game is a classic, it becomes the memory you carry into the night. The home setting matters too. Basketball is an indoor sport. It matches the season. It looks right next to a Christmas tree. It sounds right under the soft clatter of dishes. The squeak of shoes and the bounce of the ball are not aggressive sounds. They are repetitive and clean, like the ticking of a clock. Even the crowd noise feels like an ocean, not like an alarm. And the camera does a lot of the work. In most sports, the viewer has to learn where to look. Basketball tells you where to look. The camera follows the ball. The court is small enough that you always know where the action is. On a day when you might be watching from the side of the couch, or standing near the doorway, or sitting on the floor, that clarity matters. Clarity is also why highlights travel so well. Christmas is a social day. People are texting family, posting photos, sending small videos. Basketball clips fit into that. A dunk is instant. A deep three is instant. A funny reaction shot is instant. It takes one moment to understand and one moment to share. That keeps the games alive outside the living room. For the NBA, that is a quiet advantage. Christmas is when casual fans show up. Not because they plan to become fans, but because the sport is present. It is there, waiting, like a bowl of snacks. You try one, then another. Maybe you don't know every player, but you know enough. You recognize the stars. You recognize the jerseys. You recognize the stakes because the broadcast will tell you the stakes. And the league has learned to make the stakes easy. Christmas games are framed as events. The commentators talk about legacies. The promos talk about rivalries. The schedule is designed like a storybook. This team versus that team, a rematch, a grudge, a new superstar against an old one. Even if you only watch in fragments, you can feel the narrative. That narrative blends with the holiday in a useful way. Christmas is bright, but it can be complicated. Some people feel full. Some people feel empty. Some people feel both. Sports, at their best, give you a shared language that doesn't require you to explain yourself. You can argue about a foul. You can laugh about a bad shot. You can praise a player you don't even like. It's safe talk. It's neutral ground. It gives a room something to hold when the room does not know what to hold. It offers energy without conflict, emotion without confession. That is why the NBA fits the living room. It can be background, and it can be foreground. It can be comfort, and it can be competition. On Christmas, people need both. They want to feel something, but they don't want to work for it. They want to connect, but they don't want to perform. Basketball provides connection through rhythm. Possession, shot, rebound, reset. Possession, shot, rebound, reset. The repetition is calming, like a rocking chair. Then, once in a while, something sharp happens. A run, a buzzer beater, a stare down, a little burst of drama. The day wakes up for a moment, and then it settles again. The NBA also benefits from the fact that Christmas is a viewing day. People are already watching something. A movie in the morning, a parade, a holiday special, maybe a football game if one exists. The TV is not an intruder. It is a fireplace. Basketball simply claims a time slot near the flames. And because it is annual, it trains people. Once you watch one Christmas game, you remember the feeling. Next year, you expect it. The expectation becomes tradition. People don't ask, is there basketball today? They ask, which games are on? That is the moment a schedule turns into a ritual. A ritual is not built by one iconic highlight. It is built by repetition that feels pleasant. It is built by consistency that never asks too much. The NBA did not try to replace Christmas. It tried to sit beside it, like an extra chair at the table. So the league didn't just place games on December 25th. It offered a service, a reliable, familiar event, delivered in a way that doesn't compete with the holiday. It slides next to the holiday's own noise, and it fills the quiet gaps the day always leaves behind. Christmas basketball belongs to the NBA because it is the kind of entertainment that they can actually carry. It doesn't fight the holiday. It rides the same current, steady and bright, like a string of lights that can stay on for hours without asking you to stare at every bulb. There is a small practical reason too. Christmas is a day when many other options are closed. The mall hours are weird. The restaurants are limited. The streets are quieter. If you are staying inside, you want something that feels alive without requiring you to leave your own comfort. A live game does that. It feels like the world is still moving somewhere else, and you can visit that movement without changing out of your slippers. Basketball is also friendly to mixed ages. A kid can watch for the colors and the speed. A teenager can watch for the stars and the highlights. An adult can watch for the strategy and the storylines. A grandparent can watch for the familiar rhythm and the steady commentary. It is one of the few sports broadcasts where 4 generations can share a couch, and each person can find a reason to keep the screen on. And Christmas adds its own little subplot: new gifts. Every year, someone unwraps a jersey. Someone gets a pair of shoes. Someone gets a ball and starts dribbling in the hallway until an uncle gently says, "Outside, please." The NBA has become a kind of holiday language for that, a set of colors and names that show up in wrapping paper and shopping bags. When the games start, those gifts suddenly feel connected to something live. That connection works because NBA players are not just athletes on Christmas. They are characters. Even casual fans recognize a few faces and a few styles: the smooth scorer, the loud defender, the quiet superstar who makes everything look easy. On a day when people are already thinking in family stories, childhood stories, the annual retelling of who said what last year, basketball's character-driven drama fits the mood. The broadcasts lean into that without being loud about it. They show the arrivals. They show the warm-ups. They show the little smiles and the quick handshakes. They make it feel like an occasion. And because the game is indoors, the lighting is controlled. The image stays crisp. Even if you're watching through a haze of food and late sleep, the picture still looks clean. There is also something gentle about the stakes. A Christmas game matters, but it is not the end of the season. It is a checkpoint that makes it easier to enjoy. You can care without panic. You can watch a rivalry without feeling like your entire year depends on it. The tension stays inside the game instead of spilling into the day. And if you do fall asleep, basketball forgives you. You wake up, see the score, catch a replay, and you understand what happened. The story is still there. That forgiveness is rare. On Christmas, forgiveness is the point. So, when the day gets quiet and the room gets warm, the NBA feels less like a broadcast and more like a household, sound steady, familiar, and easy to keep on. Today, even people who don't follow the league will still check Christmas matchups like they're checking weather. The schedule itself is content posted, debated, ranked, and shared because December 25th feels strangely unfinished without a few hours of basketball humming nearby. The tradition starts quietly. A screen on, a game breathing, people drifting in and out of the room. Nothing dramatic, just something steady. And on a day made of routines, steady is exactly how you earn a permanent place. Chapter 2. How the NBA moved in. The NBA did not invent Christmas sports. It stepped into a day that already had a rhythm and then learned how to play inside that rhythm without breaking it. For most of the 20th century, the center of American holiday television was football. College games had tradition, and the NFL grew into a weekly habit that felt almost civic. Basketball was still negotiating for space. Pro hoops existed, but it did not yet feel like the country's default winter soundtrack. It was more local, more uneven in quality, and often treated as a second or third choice behind baseball, football, and whatever family event was happening in the other room. Christmas games existed in those earlier eras, but they did not mean what they mean now. They were simply games that happened to land on December 25th, like a matinee that got scheduled because the building was open and people were free. The league's real shift came when it stopped seeing the date as a convenience and started seeing it as a stage. A stage matters when the audience is unusual. On most nights, sports audiences are scattered. One home follows one team. Another home follows a different team. Many people ignore the game completely. Christmas is different because the day gathers people. Families stack up in one place. Friends drift in and out. Travelers nap on couches. Someone is always half watching the screen while listening to a story across the room. That gathering creates a rare kind of viewer. It is not only a fan, it is also a bystander. The NBA learned to value the bystander. If basketball can sit under a conversation, it can also steal the conversation when something exciting happens. A quick run, a late shot, a hard foul, a sudden comeback. The game can be background and then instantly become foreground, without anyone feeling like they have switched activities. That is a powerful fit for a holiday that is full of interruptions. The league also benefited from where Christmas sits inside the season. The season is underway, but it is not worn down. Teams have played enough games to reveal personality, but not so many games that everything feels repetitive. Storylines are forming. Rotations are settling. The standings are not final, but they are starting to look like something you can recognize. Christmas arrives at a moment when the season feels alive and still clean. This timing gives the league something that is hard to manufacture on random nights in January. It gives a narrative checkpoint. It gives a reason to care about a regular season game without pretending it is a playoff game. For a sport that plays many games, you need anchors. You need nights that feel like bookmarks. Christmas is a bookmark that is already in everyone's calendar, even if they do not follow basketball. Once the league understood that, it began to schedule Christmas with intent. The games stopped being random and started being curated. Rivalries mattered. Big markets mattered. Stars mattered. The league wanted matchups that could be explained quickly to a casual person walking through the room. This team and that team do not like each other. This player is trying to prove he is still the best. These two styles clash. The schedule became a set of short promises. Television accelerated the change. As sports became more national, the holiday broadcast window became more valuable. On December 25th, the television is not competing with work or school. It is competing with food, conversation, and comfort. That is softer competition. It is the kind of competition basketball can win because the sport can be watched in pieces. You can watch a quarter, step away, and return without feeling lost. The game's structure, quarters, timeouts, and frequent scoring gives the viewer permission to float. Football asks for a different kind of commitment. It can be long, and it can feel ceremonial, like you need to stay with it to understand what is happening. Basketball is more forgiving. Even if you miss 2 minutes, the broadcast can show you the key moment in one replay. The scoreboard changes quickly enough that the game always feels present. That forgiveness is part of why basketball slides into Christmas without fighting it. The NBA also learned to present Christmas as a showcase, not just a date. In the era when the league was building national stars, Christmas became a place to put those stars in front of the broadest casual audience. The point was not only ratings. The point was identity. If you want the public to associate your sport with winter, you have to be visible in winter on the biggest winter day. A star-driven league is especially suited to this because a face travels better than a logo. A casual viewer might not care about a standings race, but they will care about a famous player trying to take over a game. This is where the league's marketing instincts became important. The NBA has often been at its best when it sells stories, not only who is playing, but why it matters. Christmas is a natural day for story packaging. Networks build the day like a long show. They create previews, features, and gentle reminders of what is at stake. They explain rivalries. They replay old highlights. They tell you, in a calm, persuasive way, that this is not a random afternoon. It is a yearly appointment. As the appointment solidified, the schedule itself became content. People argued about it like they argue about gift lists. Who deserves a slot? Who is being disrespected? Which matchup is a classic and which feels forced? The debates start weeks before the games and continue afterward. That is another advantage of a holiday showcase. It creates conversation even when the games are not being played. The NBA also benefited from a kind of scarcity. The NFL can dominate a Sunday because Sunday is already football-shaped. But Christmas is not shaped for one sport. The date moves through the week. Sometimes it lands on a Tuesday, sometimes on a Friday, sometimes on a Sunday. That makes football's usual habits harder to guarantee every year. The NBA, with games almost every night during the season, can promise consistency. It can say, without much effort, we will be here no matter what day of the week it is. Consistency is underrated. A holiday tradition needs to be dependable. People do not build rituals around events that show up only sometimes. The NBA's steady presence, year after year, made the games feel like a feature of the day instead of a novelty. Even when the league's overall popularity rose and fell, the Christmas slot kept returning, like a familiar song that still plays even if radio trends change. Then the league's golden eras gave the tradition memorable images. As the NBA became more national in the 1980s, the sport's best players began to feel like household names. When the league showcased top matchups on the holiday, it was not only giving fans a game, it was giving the public a chance to see the stars in a setting that already felt special. The holiday audience is not always patient, but it is emotionally open. It is a day when people are already thinking about story and meaning. The NBA learned to attach its stars to that feeling. In the 1990s, as the league's reach widened, Christmas games became part of how basketball introduced itself to casual viewers. Many people who did not watch every week still knew the idea of a Christmas showcase. They might not know the standings. They might not know who was hurt. But they knew, in a general way, that the NBA would deliver something worth glancing at while the house moved around them. The broadcast style evolved too. By the late 20th and early 21st centuries, sports television had become less about the pure event and more about the long narrative around it. Pre-game segments stretched. Halftime became a studio conversation. Between games, networks filled the space with highlights, interviews, and reminders of the next matchup. That format fits Christmas perfectly because the day is already full of gaps. People come and go. They snack. They clean. They nap. The NBA's holiday becomes a soft, continuous program that can absorb all of that. There is also a global dimension now. The NBA's audience is international, and the league understands that a Christmas showcase is a chance to present its product to viewers around the world. The visibility is the point. It is a day when people in many places have time, and time is the rarest currency in modern media. This is why the Christmas tradition survives even when the league changes. Coaches change, rules shift, playing styles evolve, stars retire, and new stars rise. But the holiday window remains valuable because it is not only about basketball. It is about attention, and about the way attention behaves on December 25th. And because the day repeats, the habit keeps renewing itself. So the league did not claim the holiday by force. It earned a corner of it by offering something reliable, a set of games that can live beside the holiday instead of competing with it. The NBA learned to be present without being loud, and to be exciting without demanding. That is the real move. The league treated Christmas as a stage, then stayed on the stage long enough that nobody could imagine the day without at least a few hours of basketball. Now the league markets Christmas like a mini-festival. The schedule leaks early. Social media turns matchups into arguments, and even non-fans know which stars are supposed to appear. The holiday broadcast works like a yearly check-in on the NBA's hierarchy. If you want to see how tradition forms, watch the repetition. A league shows up, networks build a habit, and families start expecting a game to be there. Eventually, the question is not whether the NBA plays on Christmas, but which teams get the invitation. Chapter 3. The Showcase Game. Once the NBA understood Christmas as a stage, it had to answer one question. What should a Christmas game feel like? A normal regular season night is for the faithful. It is for the people who know the schedule, know the standings, and know which bench player is quietly important. A Christmas game is for everyone who happens to be in the room. That changes the design. The game has to be easy to enter. The story has to be obvious. The stakes have to be readable, even if you have not watched basketball in a month. So the league began to build Christmas around the idea of the showcase. A showcase does not require the game to decide the season. It requires the game to represent the season. It is a preview, a sample, a trailer for what might come later in the spring. That is why the matchups are chosen with care. Christmas schedules tend to favor teams with star power, storylines, and fan bases that travel beyond their local markets. The league wants names that casual viewers recognize. It wants teams that feel like brands. And it wants contrast that can be explained quickly. Defense versus offense, old guard versus new wave, past champions versus rising challengers. But a showcase is not only the matchup. It is also the packaging. On Christmas, the broadcast is polished. The pacing feels slightly more deliberate. The commentators sound slightly more intimate, as if they understand many viewers are listening while cooking or talking. The network fills the day with reminders that this is a holiday event, not just another stop on a long schedule. Basketball is especially suited to this kind of holiday television. The court is a clean rectangle. The action fits the frame. The ball is easy to track. The scoring creates constant small rewards. For a viewer who's half-focused, that matters. A three-pointer, a dunk, a chase-down block, a fast break. Even if you do not understand every strategy, you understand the points, and points keep arriving like little gifts. Basketball's rhythm also matches how people live on Christmas. The sport comes in quarters, and quarters come with natural pauses. There are timeouts that let a room talk. There are free throws that slow everything down for a moment. There is halftime, a built-in intermission that lines up with refilling plates or checking on the oven. Even the commercials, usually an annoyance, become part of the holiday flow because they give you permission to get up without missing something essential. Those pauses create easy entry points. If you walk into the room late, you can catch the score, listen for a few sentences, and understand the situation. The broadcast will show you a graphic, a stat, a quick replay, and you are caught up. That is not an accident. The NBA's presentation is designed to keep reintroducing the story for people who come and go. It is a sport that welcomes interruptions, and the holiday is built from interruptions. The league also benefits from the way basketball produces clean, repeatable highlights. A dunk looks like a dunk no matter who you are. A deep three looks bold no matter what team you follow. A block at the rim is easy to understand. On a day when you might be watching with grandparents, cousins, or a friend who barely follows sports, the highlights still translate. They create a shared reaction that does not require insider knowledge. The sport also has a star structure that television loves. In many sports, a great player can be hidden by the system. In basketball, the great player is always present. They touch the ball. They create the highlights. They face the other star directly. The camera finds them. On Christmas, that visibility becomes a promise. You tune in because you want to see the best players on the biggest winter day, the way you tune in for a famous singer on a televised special. And the players know it. They speak about Christmas games as a stage. They remember who showed out on Christmas. They remember who failed. They remember who hit the shot. They remember who argued with an official, who smiled at the crowd, who turned the arena into a theater. That memory changes behavior. A regular season game in February might be important, but it can be forgotten. A Christmas game feels like it will be replayed. That adds an edge, even if everyone tries to pretend it is just another night. This is where the NBA's holiday identity becomes different from its playoff identity. The playoffs are intense. They are heavy. Every possession feels expensive. Christmas is lighter. It is not supposed to feel grim. It can be competitive and still feel warm. The league wants drama, but not dread. It wants intensity, but not exhaustion. The best Christmas games tend to have a certain brightness to them, even when the defense is tight and the last minutes are tense. There is also a social element that helps. Christmas basketball is rarely watched alone. It is watched in rooms with mixed attention. That changes what counts as entertainment. A game does not have to be perfectly played. It has to create moments. A run that makes someone look up. A sequence that triggers a small argument. A late shot that makes a whole room react at the same time. Those shared reactions are part of the product. The league learned to schedule for that product. It often starts the day with a game that is easy to watch, then builds toward a late slot that feels like the headline. The day becomes a gradual climb. If you watch all of it, it feels like an all-day festival. If you only catch one game, it still feels like you caught the important part, because the broadcast tells you which part is important. This approach turns the NBA into a curator. On Christmas, the league is not only presenting games, it is presenting a narrative about itself. These are the teams we believe in. These are the players we are placing at the center. These are the rivalries we want you to remember. The schedule becomes a self-portrait. That self-portrait shifts year and the shifts matter. A team that earns a Christmas slot is being told publicly you are relevant. A team that loses a slot is being told, gently, you are fading. Fans feel these signals. Media reacts to them. Players notice. Christmas selection becomes a small kind of status. That status is also why the holiday can feel like a quiet referendum on the league's direction. When new teams and new stars show up on Christmas, its signals change. When the same franchises return year after year, it signals continuity. Fans read these choices like clues, and the league knows it. It wants the schedule to feel both familiar and fresh, like a holiday movie you have seen before, but with one new scene that makes you pay attention. The day also shapes conversation in a simple way. You can be a lifelong fan and still enjoy the game as casual talk. You can debate a coaching decision without having to defend your entire sports identity. You can say a player looks tired or the defense looks slow, and the room can agree or disagree without anyone getting hurt. On Christmas, sports discussion becomes a safe topic that can fill silence and soften tension. And status changes the way people talk. A strong Christmas performance can lift a player's season story. A bad Christmas showing can stick like a label, even if it is unfair. The holiday audience is big, and the memory is sticky because it is attached to a date people remember. If you do something memorable on a random Tuesday, the date dissolves. If you do something memorable on December 25th, people remember where they were sitting when it happened. That is why Christmas games can become myth makers. One late shot can live for years. One heated matchup can become a reference point whenever the teams meet again. One young star can announce himself to casual viewers who did not know his name before dinner. The league wants those myths. They do not always arrive, but the schedule is designed to invite them. The broadcast invites them too. It frames the day with history. It shows old highlights. It tells you about famous moments that happened on Christmas in past seasons. This is not only nostalgia, it is instruction. The broadcast is teaching the viewer how to watch the holiday. It is saying, Christmas games matter because Christmas games have mattered before. You are joining a story that already exists. This is also why the presentation often feels slightly ceremonial. You will see special intros, special music, and a little extra emphasis on the stars during warm-ups. You will hear the commentators treat the game like a showcase. You will feel the network reminding you that this is a national stage. Even if you are half paying attention, the cues work. They make the game feel larger than a normal regular season night. Underneath all that theater, the game still has to cooperate. The matchups are built to produce tension. Two teams that play fast can create a track meet. Two teams that defend can create a chess match. A classic rivalry can create edge. A new rivalry can create curiosity. The league mixes these options across the day, so the festival has different flavors. And because it is Christmas, the flavors have to fit the household. That is another reason basketball works. It is loud enough to feel alive, but not so loud that it overwhelms everything else. It can be exciting without requiring the whole room to turn into a stadium. People can keep talking. People can keep moving. The game can be present without dominating. Over time, viewers begin to treat the day like a ritual. Some households watch from the first game to the last. Some tune in only for the late game. Some use it as background while they cook and clean. But the habit is stable. The NBA is there, and the day feels slightly incomplete without it. That is what a showcase ultimately is. It is not only a special game, it is a special expectation. The league does not need every Christmas game to be a classic. It needs the day to feel like a classic year after year. If the day feels like a classic, then even an ordinary game can feel like part of something larger. So Christmas belongs to the NBA in the public mind, because the league designed it that way. It built the day as a show. It chose matchups that read clearly. It packaged the games with warmth and history. It asked the stars to treat the day like a stage. And it repeated that formula until the public began to think of December 25th and basketball as one idea. It also helps that the holiday games rarely feel like homework. You do not need to know every subplot to enjoy them. The scoreboard, the stars, and the moment are enough. That simplicity is what keeps people watching, even when they only meant to pass through the room. The showcase works because it respects the holiday. It gives people something to watch, something to talk about, and something to return to, without demanding that they abandon the rest of the day. Now the Christmas showcase is also a second screen event. People clip highlights in real time, argue about the schedule while the games are still happening, and treat the day like a live thread. The holiday becomes a shared feed as much as a broadcast. A tradition survives when it adapts. The NBA kept the core idea, stars on a stage, and updated how people gather around it. So Christmas games still feel like a communal living room experience, even when the living room is spread across phones and group chats. Chapter 4: Stars, Storylines, and the Gift of Familiar Faces. Christmas games work because they feel simple from the outside. Turn on the TV, see two teams, watch the score move. But what's really happening is that the NBA is using the holiday to make its stars feel like part of your family's yearly routine. A regular season schedule is long, too long for casual fans to hold in their heads. But a holiday showcase is easy to remember because it's attached to a day you already remember. That's why Christmas becomes a shortcut. It's a yearly reminder of who matters in the league right now. On most nights, stars are competing for attention against work, school, errands, and sleep. On December 25th, the league gets something rare. A crowd that's already together and already looking for shared experiences. That's the perfect environment for star power, because a star isn't just talent. A star is recognition. It's the moment someone who barely follows basketball says, "Oh, I know him." The NBA has always understood this. It's a league where personalities travel. Jerseys are recognizable. Faces are marketable. Playing styles are distinct. And unlike sports where a star can disappear for long stretches, basketball keeps its main characters in the frame. They're constantly visible, constantly involved, constantly narrating the game with their decisions. So Christmas becomes a stage for the league's main characters, not in a dramatic, loud way, in a familiar way. Like seeing a celebrity host a holiday special. It's not that the game is bigger in the standings. It's that the game feels bigger in the culture. And culture is what builds tradition. Think about how people talk on Christmas. Conversations drift. Someone is telling a story from childhood. Someone is teasing someone else. Someone is asking about work, about school, about life. In that environment, basketball works best when it offers easy storylines that people can latch onto without studying. This is why Christmas matchups are often built around a sentence you can say in one breath. These two teams don't like each other. This player wants to prove something. This team is the champion, and that team wants the crown. This is the old star versus the new one. When the storyline is clear, the room doesn't need a tutorial. The game explains itself. Christmas also tends to highlight star contrasts. A scorer who feels inevitable, a defender who feels stubborn, a playmaker who makes the game look slow and easy, a young player who moves like he's trying to outrun the calendar. The league isn't only selling a matchup. It's selling a set of personalities you can recognize with your eyes. That matters because Christmas viewing is not always focused. People are half watching, half living. So the game needs to offer moments that read instantly. A tough shot, a celebration, a stare down, a block that feels like a statement, a run that changes the mood in the room. Those moments create little sparks, and sparks create memory. This is where Christmas becomes a myth-making machine. Not because every game is legendary, but because the date is legendary. If something memorable happens on December 25th, it stays attached to the day. People remember the year. They remember where they were sitting. They remember who was in the room. They remember the leftover plates on the table. You remember the leftover plates on the table. A buzzer beater in March can blur into other March buzzer beaters. A buzzer beater on Christmas becomes a story someone tells again next year. The NBA has used this effect to strengthen the identity of its stars. A great Christmas performance becomes part of a player's legend. It becomes a highlight package. It becomes a replayed clip. It becomes a remember when moment that fans pull out whenever that player is mentioned. And even when the game is not historic, the exposure matters. Christmas introduces players to casual fans. A kid sees a star on a holiday broadcast, then asks for the jersey later. A parent sees a new face and realizes the league has changed since they last paid attention. A grandparent recognizes one name and learns a new one. This is how the league refreshes its public memory. The holiday also creates a softer emotional setting for sports. Christmas can be joyful, but it can also be heavy. It can be lonely for some people. It can be tense for others. It can be complicated in ways people don't say out loud. Basketball offers a shared focus that doesn't require confession. It gives the room something to talk about that isn't personal, but still feels meaningful. Stars help with that, because stars make the conversation safe. You can discuss a player without discussing yourself. You can argue about a call without arguing about family history. The game becomes neutral ground, and neutral ground is valuable on a day when emotions are close to the surface. This is why the NBA's Christmas tradition feels different from other sports traditions. It's not only about competition. It's about providing a public experience that fits inside private life. The league is offering a service, a dependable, recognizable show that can live beside dinner, gifts, and conversation. The stars are the hook, but the comfort is the product. The league also protects the holiday's specialness by treating Christmas slots like status. If you get a Christmas game, it means the league believes you matter. Fans notice. Players notice. Media notices. It becomes part of the league's yearly storytelling, like an awards nomination. Who got invited? Who didn't? Who belongs in the spotlight? That conversation starts before the games are even played, and it continues after. It keeps the holiday alive in the public mind as an event, not just a date. And the more the event repeats, the more it becomes normal. At a certain point, the NBA no longer feels like a guest on Christmas. It feels like a resident, like something that has always been there, even if it hasn't. That's what tradition does. It makes the past feel longer than it is. So Christmas belongs to the NBA because the league learned how to attach its stars to the holiday's emotional rhythm. It made its players feel like familiar faces you see every year. It built storylines that fit inside a living room. It created moments that stick to a date people already remember. And once a star becomes part of your holiday memory, the league doesn't have to fight for your attention. The day brings you back automatically. Now Christmas games are also branding events. Players arrive with holiday sneakers, themed warm-ups, and camera-ready moments built for clips. The league sells the vibe as much as the score, because the vibe is what people share when they're not watching closely. On Christmas, the NBA's biggest advantage is familiarity. A star is a face you recognize in a room full of people you recognize. That mix feels comforting. And comfort is what turns a game into a holiday habit that keeps returning. Chapter 5. The NFL Gap, the NBA Window. For a long time, Christmas belonged to football by default. Not because the NFL claimed it, but because football owned the American calendar in the fall and early winter. If there was a big sports day, football usually found a way to be part of it. But Christmas is different. Christmas doesn't behave like a normal sports day. It's not just a date. It's a full-body schedule. Travel, cooking, visiting, hosting, cleaning, resting. It's a day where people want entertainment, but they don't want something that asks them to build a day around it. That's where the NBA slipped in. Not by overpowering football, by finding the window football couldn't fully occupy. The NFL is built on scarcity. One game a week, high stakes. One mistake can change a season. That makes it intense, and intensity is powerful. But intensity is not always what Christmas needs. Christmas needs something that can be present without being dominant. Football games are also long in a specific way. They stretch, they stop, they restart. They ask you to track downs, drives, clock management, and momentum. That's great when you're locked in, but Christmas viewing is often casual and interrupted. People move around, people talk, people step away. And the sport you choose for Christmas has to survive that reality. Basketball is built for interruptions. You can miss 2 minutes and still understand the story. You can leave during a timeout and come back during a free throw. You can half watch a quarter, then fully watch the last 5 minutes and still feel like you were part of it. That flexibility is not a small thing. It's the difference between a game that fits into a holiday and a game that competes with it. And then there's timing. Football has its strongest grip on Sundays, and it builds its ritual around that day. Christmas isn't always a Sunday. Sometimes it's midweek. Sometimes it's on a day where football feels like an intruder rather than a host. The NBA, on the other hand, is already a daily sport. Basketball feels normal on any day because basketball is always on. So when Christmas lands on a weekday, the NBA doesn't need to explain itself. It just shows up like it always does, but dressed nicer. The league also benefits from the season itself. By late December, the NBA has something it can sell. The season has started. Teams have identities. Early surprises have emerged. Stars are already in rhythm. Storylines exist without feeling stale. You're not watching a preseason vibe. You're watching real basketball that still feels fresh. That sweet spot matters. Because Christmas is the moment when casual fans are most willing to check in. And when they check in, the league wants them to see clarity. Clear stars, clear stakes, clear matchups, clear energy. Football in late December can sometimes feel stressful. Playoff math, injuries, weather games, ugly wins. It's intense, but it can be heavy. Basketball, by contrast, is indoors, bright, controlled, and visually clean. Hardwood, lights, jerseys, smooth movement. It feels like comfort food. That visual comfort is part of the secret. Christmas is full of brightness and color and decoration. Basketball matches that aesthetic. Football, especially in cold weather outdoor games, can feel gray. It can feel gritty. It can feel like survival. Again, great for what football is. Not always what Christmas wants. The NBA also learned how to program the day. One game is nice. A full slate is a plan. It gives families choices. It lets people pick a matchup that fits their mood. Early game while breakfast is being cleaned. Midday game while people are arriving. Late game while the room settles into the couch. That programming turns Christmas into a sports buffet, not a single event. And buffets work on holidays because people want options. They want to graze. They want to drift. This is where the NBA's advantage becomes structural. The league doesn't need one perfect game. It needs a lineup that keeps the screen warm all day. Even if one game is bad, the next one might be good. Even if the afternoon is busy, the evening might slow down. So the NBA owns the window, the stretch of hours where the day is alive but not focused. It fills the space between gift opening and dinner. It gives people something to do with their hands, their eyes, their conversations. And over time, that window becomes tradition. Once a tradition forms, it becomes self-reinforcing. Networks plan around it. Advertisers plan around it. Families plan around it. Fans plan around it. The expectation becomes part of the holiday. You see it in the simplest way. People start talking about the Christmas slate before Christmas arrives. They argue about matchups like they argue about the menu. They predict outcomes like they predict which relative will say something wild at the table. The league also benefits from comparison. Every Christmas game is measured against Christmas games from the past. That creates a sense of history, even when the game is brand new. It tells viewers, without saying it out loud, that this day is different. And in sports, different is a commodity. So Christmas belongs to the NBA because the NBA understood the gap football couldn't fully fill. It understood the viewing environment. It built a schedule that fits the day's interruptions. It made the screen feel like part of the holiday, not a distraction from it. The NFL may show up on Christmas sometimes, but the NBA lives there. Today, the NFL and NBA can share the date, but they don't share the same role. Football can feel like a headline. Basketball feels like the soundtrack, steady, modular, and easy to keep on while the day keeps moving. Christmas doesn't reward the loudest sport. It rewards the sport that fits. Basketball fits the interruptions, the daylight, the drifting attention, and the need for something familiar in the background. That fit is what slowly turns a schedule into ownership. Chapter 6. When tradition becomes ownership. At some point, a holiday tradition stops feeling like a choice. It starts feeling like the default setting. That is the stage the NBA reached with Christmas. The early years mattered, but the middle years mattered more. A tradition is not built by the first time you do something. It is built by the fifth time you do it, when people stop noticing that it was ever new. The NBA kept showing up on December 25th, and the repetition did the heavy lifting. In the background, television did its part. Pro basketball grew up in an era when sports were becoming living room habits. If you can put a game in front of people at the right time, year after year, it becomes part of how they remember the day. They do not remember every score. They remember the feeling of the broadcast being there. The league also benefited from the fact that Christmas is not a single moment. It is a long day. There is morning, there is afternoon, there is evening. Basketball fits inside that shape. One game can run while food is being prepared. Another can run while dishes are being cleared. Another can run while the house gets quiet. Once the NBA understood that, It stopped treating Christmas like a game on a holiday and started treating it like a slate. Multiple games, multiple windows. A simple idea. If families are home at different times, give the day more than one entry point. Then the league did something else that seems obvious now but was not obvious at the time. It treated Christmas like a showcase, not just another date on the schedule. The matchups were curated. Stars were highlighted. Rivalries were emphasized. The presentation was cleaner. The tone was bigger, but still friendly. That balance is important. Christmas basketball cannot feel like playoff basketball. The playoffs are pressure. Christmas is comfort. The league learned to sell significance without selling stress. It learned to use the day as a narrative reset. By late December, every team has a story forming, even if it is messy. Christmas becomes the moment when those stories are introduced to the widest audience. A casual fan might not know who is struggling or who is surging, but a Christmas broadcast will tell him quickly, with simple stakes. This is why stars matter so much on Christmas. A star is a shortcut. A star lets a viewer enter the game without homework. You know the face, you know the name, you know the idea. Even if you do not follow the standings, you can follow a superstar. The league leaned into that shortcut. It put its biggest names in its biggest windows. It created an unspoken rule. If you are a great player, you should have a Christmas moment. And if you get one, you should treat it like a stage, because everyone is watching in the background. For decades, the league has used Christmas to remind people what it sells. It sells skill you can see clearly on a court. It sells personalities you can recognize quickly. It sells endings, because basketball endings are usually fast and readable. Close games stay close, then change in a minute. That readability matters on a day when attention is interrupted. Someone is checking the oven. Someone is answering a FaceTime call. Someone is building something that came in a box with too many pieces. Basketball lets you step out and step back in. It gives you timeouts, free throws, quarter breaks. The sport is built from segments. Football can own a holiday too, but it asks for a different kind of commitment. Football can be long and tactical, and the pauses do not always feel like pauses. Basketball's pauses feel like natural breath. That makes the day easier. And when something is easy, people do it again. Over time, the moments stacked up. A dagger shot, a comeback run, a rivalry game that turns into a statement. Even if you missed the full broadcast, you saw the highlight. Because Christmas is a day when people share what they are watching. Family group chats fill up. Social feeds fill up. The NBA benefits from the natural sharing rhythm of the holiday. It also benefits from the way the day is paced socially. A playoff game is often the only thing on a fan's mind. A Christmas game is one part of a larger day. That sounds like a disadvantage, but it is not. It means the game gets discussed in small bursts, all day long, in many rooms, by many people. The conversation travels. That travel is how ownership spreads. A tradition is not only a personal habit, it is a shared habit. It is something you assume other people are also doing. When the league puts games on Christmas, it is not just chasing viewers. It is attaching itself to a feeling people already have, the feeling of being together, even if together means in the same house, doing different things. The broadcast becomes a soft social glue. The NBA also found a visual advantage that people rarely say out loud. Basketball looks good in winter. Hardwood, bright jerseys, clean lines, the geometry of the court. It reads well in daylight and in lamplight. It does not fight the vibe of a living room. And because there are more possessions, there are more little moments that feel like action. Someone turns their head, sees a run, and stays. Someone looks up, sees a star hit a tough shot, and says something. The game gives you small chances to re-enter. This is part of why Christmas games became a stage for identity, not only for teams, but for the league itself. The NFL has Sundays. College football has Saturdays. Baseball has summer nights. The NBA made a claim on a winter day when the country is already watching television. That claim became more valuable as the sports calendar got crowded. Bowl games, holiday movies, family plans, travel. A single basketball game could be lost in the noise. A full Christmas slate is harder to ignore. It is an event you can stumble into. The league also improved how it talked about the event. It did not say, "Please watch." It said, "Look who is playing." The schedule itself became content. Debates started days ahead. Fans argued about who deserved the spotlight. That argument is a kind of free marketing, and it is also proof of ownership. People do not argue about a thing that does not matter. Then there is the player side, which adds a quiet layer to the tradition. For players, Christmas is not a normal workday. It is travel, hotels, routines shifted. It is missing parts of morning with family, or doing the family part earlier and then leaving. That sacrifice can create tension, but it can also create meaning. A holiday game feels different. The arena has a different energy. Players often talk about it like an honor and a burden at the same time. That mixed feeling fits Christmas itself. The holiday is bright, but it can be complicated. Some people feel full. Some people feel empty. Some people feel both. Sports, at their best, give you a shared language that does not require you to explain yourself. You can argue about a foul. You can laugh about a bad shot. You can praise a player you do not even like. It is safe talk. It is neutral ground. It gives a room something to hold. It can fill silence without turning into a heavy conversation. In that way, Christmas basketball is a service. It gives people an activity that is not personal, but still shared. It gives people something to do together that does not demand vulnerability. You can just watch. You can just react. There is also the global angle. Christmas is a global holiday in a loose sense, but the NBA is also a global league. Fans outside the United States may not care about American football, but they care about basketball. When the NBA puts its best product on Christmas, it is placing a big event on a day when many people around the world are also home, also resting, also willing to watch. Modern media made that easier. You do not need cable to find the games. You just need a way-in. Streaming, clips, live updates, group chats, social feeds. All of it compresses the distance between the game and the viewer. A holiday tradition becomes stronger when access becomes easier. It also becomes stronger when the tradition is flexible. Some people watch the early game while kids play with new toys. Some people watch later after a long drive. Some people catch highlights between visits. A tradition survives when it fits many versions of the same day. The NBA's product is naturally flexible. You can watch one quarter and feel satisfied. You can watch the final 5 minutes and still get the emotional payoff. A close finish is an instant story with a clear ending. And the league has learned how to protect that payoff. It tries to schedule games that are likely to be competitive. It tries to put big names together. It tries to create stakes. Even if the stakes are simple, like pride or history or a rematch. The broadcast tells you why the game matters, even if you do not know the standings. That is another part of ownership. The league is not only placing games, it is teaching people how to care, quickly, in a way that feels gentle. It is onboarding viewers without making them feel behind. There is still a risk, of course. Blowouts happen. Stars get injured. Teams rest players. People complain. But the tradition usually survives the complaints because the holiday is bigger than the details. The tradition is the slot itself, the afternoon game, the evening game, the sense that the day has basketball inside it. Once that slot exists in people's minds, it becomes hard to remove. You can change the teams. You can change the times. You can change the networks. But you cannot easily change the expectation. People will still look for it. Ownership shows up in language. People say, The Christmas games, as if the phrase does not need explanation. They talk about the matchups the way they talk about the Thanksgiving parade. It is not just programming. It is part of the holiday soundtrack. Even outside homes, it travels. Bars that stay open put it on. Airports have it on muted screens. Nurses on breaks catch a few possessions. It becomes a small shared signal that the day is happening wherever you are. And traditions, once installed, are stubborn. They are built from repetition that feels pleasant. They are built from consistency that never asks too much. Basketball has that advantage. It can be background, and it can become the focus without changing what it is. That is why Christmas belongs to the NBA. Not because the league is louder than the holiday. Because it learned how to be compatible with the holiday. It learned how to be present without being intrusive and meaningful without being exhausting. In the end, Christmas basketball is not about one perfect game. It is about the feeling that for a few hours, the day has a steady pulse. The NBA provides the pulse. The holiday provides the room. When those two things line up, the result stops feeling like a marketing plan. It starts feeling like it was always there. Today, the Christmas slate is debated weeks ahead like a mini playoff bracket. Fans share screenshots, argue about who deserves the spotlight, and treat tip-off times like appointments. Even casual viewers know there will be basketball because the day now expects it. So the tradition holds because it asks for so little. Turn it on. Let it hum. Step in for a quarter. Step out for dessert. Step back for the finish. On a day built from routines, that gentle rhythm earns its place. By the time the last game reaches the fourth quarter, the house is quieter. Plates are lighter. Conversations soften. The TV isn't the main event, but it's the steady glow everyone shares like a fireplace that asks nothing and still keeps the room together. Before we slip into one specific game, notice what we've built so far. Christmas doesn't need basketball. It simply has a gap after the morning, before the evening, where the house wants something steady, shared, and easy to enter. The NBA filled that gap first with scheduling, then with repetition. Year after year, the matchups became familiar. The broadcast became background. And the background became tradition because it asked for attention in small, comfortable pieces, not in one long demand. Now we go to the game that made it feel official. The day when the country didn't just watch because it was on, but watched because it was Christmas. Not loud, not frantic. Just clear moments, arriving on time and staying. Some Christmas games are background. One Christmas game becomes the reason you plan the day around the TV. This is that game. The night the NBA's holiday slot felt like an appointment, and who's playing became part of December 25th. Chapter 1. Christmas Afternoon. Big story. Christmas Afternoon in 2004 had that familiar softness. People drifting between kitchen and couch, plates appearing and disappearing, laughter in small bursts. Then the schedule delivered a matchup that felt bigger than a regular season game. Los Angeles and Miami, with two stars tied to one breakup. It wasn't subtle why it mattered. Shaquille O'Neal had left the Lakers and landed in Miami, and Kobe Bryant was still in Los Angeles, still trying to prove the story could continue without him. On Christmas, the league put them on the same floor, under the same lights, in the same frame. That framing is what Christmas does best. It turns a game into a shared event because the audience is already gathered. You don't have to persuade a family to sit down for sports. You just have to give the room something interesting to look at when the conversation needs a pause. The broadcast leaned into the narrative without needing to shout. You could feel it in the way the cameras lingered, on Shaq's face when the introductions rolled, on Kobe's posture when he settled into his first stance, on the benches when each side tried to look calm about something that wasn't calm. Christmas games are usually about comfort, but this one carried a clean edge. It was personal, and everyone knew it. That's the first ingredient of a tradition-making game. It creates stakes that even casual viewers can understand in one sentence, without a chart or a deep history lesson. Shaq's presence changed the temperature in the building. He was still the kind of center who made the paint feel crowded just by arriving there. Miami's offense could slow down, throw it inside, and let the game breathe. Perfect pacing for a holiday crowd that likes its drama steady. Kobe, on the other hand, made the game sharper. He didn't ask for permission to take over. His shots came with that familiar confidence, and also with a certain impatience, as if each possession could either confirm his legacy or delay it. Christmas magnifies that kind of intensity. The Lakers were still the Lakers, still wearing the weight of recent championships, still carrying the expectation that big days belonged to them. Miami was the newer promise, an ambitious team, a new partnership, a city that felt bright enough to match the holiday lights. And then there was Dwayne Wade, young and fast, moving like the future had already started. On Christmas, that matters. The holiday isn't only nostalgia. It's also the feeling that a new memory could be made right in front of you while you're still holding wrapping paper. The early mids had that careful testing you see in games with real storylines. Both sides tried to find the pressure points. Miami looked for touches near the rim. Los Angeles looked for rhythm on the perimeter. The crowd listened to the game like it was a conversation with subtext. At home, people listened too. A fork paused. A glass hovered. That's what a good Christmas game does. It creates those little silences where a room decides, together, that the screen is worth attention. Not forever, just for now, just for the next few possessions. Shaq's touches weren't just points. They were messages. Every time he backed down, every time he sealed for position, it reminded everyone that the trade wasn't abstract. It was a body in a new jersey, pushing against an old home, asking the building to accept reality. Kobe responded in the language he trusted. Difficult shots, controlled footwork, and insistence on taking responsibility. When he rose into a jumper, it felt like a private argument he was having with the story that followed him, the one that said he needed Shaq more than Shaq needed him. The game kept balancing on that question, and it made the minutes feel heavier. Christmas basketball usually floats, but this one carried weight in a way that still fit the day. It didn't ruin the mood. It simply gave the mood a shape, something firm enough to hold. Somewhere in the middle of the second quarter, the night began to resemble what the NBA wanted Christmas to become. Not background noise, not a random treat, but a stage where the league could place its biggest stories and let them play out in real time. Because the league understood something simple. On Christmas, the audience is broad. You get the devoted fans, yes, but you also get the relatives who only watch when it's a holiday. The kids who notice jersey colors, the grandparents who like the steady rhythm of the clock. A game that can hold all of them needs more than skill. It needs clarity. It needs characters. It needs a reason to care. This matchup delivered all three, and it did it in a way that required no explanation beyond names you'd already heard in headlines. As the halftime break arrived, the broadcast didn't feel like a pause. It felt like a breath. People refilled drinks. Someone brought in dessert. Nobody changed the channel. That's another ingredient of tradition. The sense that leaving would mean missing something you'll hear about later. Something else was happening in the way the game was being presented. The graphics were clean, the storytelling was simple, and the commentary kept returning to the human stakes. For a holiday audience, that accessibility matters. Christmas isn't a day when everyone wants to learn schemes. It's a day when people want to feel included. A big storyline is that. You can walk into the room in the third quarter and immediately understand the tension, because the tension is personal and familiar. Pride, change, unfinished business. The players seemed to understand the stage too. There was a little more show in the walk to the free throw line, a little more patience after whistles, as if everyone knew the cameras were collecting images that might replay next year when the league tried to sell Christmas all over again. And because it was Los Angeles and Miami, The visual fit the moment. The uniforms popped against the court. The arena looked bright. The game looked like an event, not a routine. Even if you were half watching, you could tell this wasn't a Tuesday in February. That sense of event is what separates a Christmas game that's merely on TV from a Christmas game that becomes the centerpiece. The NBA didn't need fans to remember every score. It needed them to remember the feeling of sitting down and realizing, almost by accident, that they were locked in. Afterward, the talk didn't stay inside the sports world. It drifted into regular conversations at work the next day, in school hallways, and quick phone calls to friends. When a Christmas game travels that far, it becomes part of the holiday itself, a shared reference that resets each season. The second half opened with the kind of focus that makes time feel cleaner. Defensive possessions lasted a little longer. Body language tightened. The game stopped being a friendly holiday exhibition and became a real contest, the kind where every mistake has a small echo. Miami's plan was steady. Keep pressure near the rim, keep pace under control, let Shaq's gravity create space for others. Los Angeles tried to answer with spacing and shot making, with the idea that if the floor is wide enough, even the biggest center can be made to chase. That chess match is part of why Christmas basketball works. It's visible. You can see the shapes change. Even if you don't know the play calls, you can feel when a team is comfortable and when it's searching. The game tells you who is in control without words. Wade's quickness started to matter more as the minutes stacked. He slipped into gaps, turned simple angles into advantages, and made the Lakers defended speeds that didn't feel holiday-friendly at all. Yet the contrast made it more exciting. Calm room, fast game, steady clock. Kobe kept returning to the moment as if he owed it something. He took on defenders, absorbed contact, and kept shooting. The shots were not always easy, but that was the point. On Christmas, a star's willingness to carry the burden becomes part of the entertainment. The arena sound rose and fell like a tide. When Shaq drew attention, the roar had a deep, surprised tone, like the building recognizing its own history. When Kobe answered, the noise sharpened, like a crowd admiring skill, even when it comes from someone they're conflicted about. Late in the third quarter, you could sense the game tightening toward a finish. Possessions felt more valuable. Coaches looked more serious. The holiday looseness faded, replaced by that familiar MB, a feeling where the last 6 minutes start to live in their own separate world. At home, that's when people lean forward. Someone turns the volume up. Someone finally asks, "What's the score?" Those questions are small, but they're how a tradition forms. You remember the day by remembering the moment the room started paying attention together. The fourth quarter carried that clean, bright tension that television loves. Every cut looked sharper. Every timeout felt longer. Every free throw had an audience in the kitchen and an audience on the couch. Both groups suddenly aligned on the same simple wish: make it interesting. And it stayed interesting. The lead moved. The answers arrived quickly, and neither team could fully relax. The game had the kind of rhythm that keeps you awake without making you anxious peaks and valleys. But no chaos, just a steady pull toward a decision. Shaq's minutes felt like anchor points. When he was on the floor, the game had a center of gravity. When he sat, the pace changed. The possessions scattered a little, and the story shifted toward guards and wings, toward speed and improvisation, toward the modern NBA arriving early. Kobe's late-game presence was the opposite of an anchor. It was a blade. He created shots out of thin space, and he did it with the calm of someone who believes the moment exists for him. Christmas cameras love that, because it looks like destiny, even when it's just repetition. When the final minutes arrived, the matchup stopped being about a trade and started being about a holiday memory. That's an important shift. A tradition isn't built on gossip. It's built on the feeling that you saw something real, under pressure, and you saw it together. The finish, like many great Christmas games, didn't resolve every argument. It simply gave the day a headline. One team walked away with the win, but the league walked away with something else. Proof that a Christmas showcase could feel like a mini-finals without exhausting the viewer. After the buzzer, the day continued. Dishes still needed washing. Kids still wanted batteries. But the game stayed in the air of the house, like a song you keep humming. People repeated a few plays out loud. They named the stars again. They agreed it had been worth watching. And that is how Christmas basketball becomes a habit. Not with slogans, but with a game that fits the day and also lifts it. The 2004 holiday matchup didn't invent the tradition, but it made the tradition feel modern, dramatic, and reliable enough to return to every year. Today, the NBA builds Christmas around storylines, reunions, rematches, rising stars, because it learned that narrative travels farther than standings. Fans still chase that feeling. A holiday game that's easy to enter, hard to leave. When the room remembers the game more than the commercials, the league has done its job. A Christmas matchup turns into tradition where it feels like the day's soundtrack steady, dramatic, and shared, without demanding anything back. Chapter 2. A first half built for the whole house. By the time the second quarter settled in, the game had established its tone. Not a holiday exhibition, but a real contest wrapped in holiday packaging. The players were not rushing, yet they weren't floating either. Everything felt measured, like the day itself. The camera kept returning to Shaq, and it made sense. He carried the main plot, even when he wasn't touching the ball. When he walked to the block, the defense moved early. When he posted, help defenders leaned in. Everyone reacted before the pass even arrived. That reaction created the quiet spaces Miami wanted. A shooter on the weak side would suddenly be alone for a moment. A guard would see a seam and cut through it. The offense didn't need to be fancy. It needed to be patient, and Shaq made patience feel productive. Los Angeles answered by trying to keep the paint crowded without losing the perimeter entirely. That's a delicate balance, and you can feel it in the first hesitant steps of a defender. If you commit too early, the kick out arrives. If you commit too late, the layup is already on the glass. Kobe's role in that balance was complicated. He was both the solution and the amplifier. When the Lakers needed a stable possession, he could create one. When the Lakers needed a spark, he could ignite it. But each spark also brought the game closer to being his game. That's the kind of tension Christmas television likes. It isn't loud, but it's legible. One player trying to write his own story. Another player trying to prove the story can be rewritten. Two teams trying to keep everything under control while the calendar demands a spectacle. Miami's guards kept feeding the machine. Entry passes, quick reversals, small decisions made with calm. It created a rhythm that was easy to watch. Even if you weren't a basketball person, you could follow the logic. Big man draws attention, ball moves, someone gets a clean look. Then Wade would take a possession and break the logic in the best way. He'd turn a half-open lane into a full one, a small angle into a big advantage. That contrast structure and improvisation gave the game texture. It didn't feel repetitive. It felt alive. For Los Angeles, the texture came from shot making. A jumper that drops cleanly, a pull-up that lands softly, a contested attempt that still finds the net. Basketball can be hypnotic when the ball keeps moving through the rim, and on Christmas, that hypnotic quality matters. Because the holiday audience isn't only watching for tactics, they're watching for comfort. A smooth sequence of baskets is comforting. It's like watching a familiar movie. You don't need to understand every detail to feel the momentum. The game starts to tell you how to feel. As the half progressed, you could see the push and pull between Shaq's weight and Kobe's sharpness. When Miami leaned into the post, the game slowed and thickened. When the Lakers sped it up, it thinned out again, becoming quick cuts and jump shots and fast decisions. That shifting pace is part of why the NBA works on Christmas. It can accommodate different kinds of attention. If you want to stare at the screen, there's always something to study. If you want to half watch while you talk, the score and the clock still guide you back. In the arena, the crowd responded to these shifts with a kind of collective agreement, a deep roar for a strong finish, a high cheer for a tough jumper, a murmur when a whistle interrupted something. The sound never left the building, but it didn't become chaotic either. Chaotic would have felt wrong for the day. Christmas wants intensity without stress, drama without dread. This game found that lane. It was serious, but it wasn't ugly. The physicality was there, yet the play still looked clean enough to feel like a holiday presentation. Every Christmas tradition has a ritual, and sports has its own. The ritual is the camera cutting to faces, coaches thinking, stars breathing, bench players leaning forward. Those faces tell the home viewer that something matters, even if the viewer can't explain why. The broadcast also kept using the language of return and departure. Shaq returning, the Lakers moving forward, the league stepping into a new era. That's not just marketing. It's a way to place the game inside a larger story, so the audience feels they're watching history, not just minutes. Even the commercials and bumpers played a role, because they treated the game like a holiday show. Little musical stinks, festive graphics, the sense that you were watching a special broadcast rather than a routine sports block. That packaging helps a casual viewer decide to stay. The players didn't have to say anything for the subtext to land. Shaq's body language did the talking. A small smile after a strong finish, a long look toward the baseline seats. Kobe's did too. The quick walk back on defense, the focused stare, the sense that he was keeping receipts. In a normal week, sports narratives can feel manufactured. On Christmas, they feel inevitable, because the holiday already invites story. You sit around and tell stories about childhood, about old relatives, about the time the turkey almost burned. The game simply becomes another story in the room. That's why a good Christmas matchup often feels like theater. The court becomes a stage, and the players become characters whose traits are easy to read from a distance. Shaq is force. Kobe is precision. Wade is speed. The supporting cast becomes mood and momentum. Momentum, especially, is a holiday-friendly concept. You don't need a rule book to understand it. You can feel when one team has it, and when the other is trying to steal it back. Each run becomes a small emotional wave that the whole room can ride together. Miami's runs tended to feel grounded, built from inside touches and controlled stops. Los Angeles runs felt sudden, built from makes that arrived in clusters. That difference kept the game from becoming monotonous. It kept shifting between slow certainty and quick surprise. At certain points, the crowd noise tightened into a single sound, the sound of anticipation before a free throw or before a final shot of a quarter. That anticipation is one of the purest pleasures in sports. It requires nothing from you except presence, and presence is easier on Christmas than on most days. People are already present. The usual obligations are paused. Work emails aren't demanding answers. The roads are quiet. For a few hours, the day belongs to the home, and the home can spare attention for a game. That spare attention is the NBA's opportunity. When the league places its strongest narratives here, it teaches viewers to associate basketball with the holiday's calm. Over time, the association becomes reflex. The TV turns on the way the lights turn on, simply because it's time. There were earlier eras when Christmas basketball existed without feeling central. But games like this, big stars, big story, clean presentation, help define the modern version. A full-day slate that feels like a curated playlist, designed for the way families actually spend December 25th. The game didn't just entertain. It taught the audience what Christmas basketball could be. At home, that feeling is powerful. People love the idea that a normal afternoon can contain something memorable. It makes the day feel richer without adding work. You didn't have to travel or buy a ticket. You just had to be in the room when the moment passed by. and the game kept offering small moments. A hard screen that freed a shooter, a steal that woke the crowd, a sequence where Kobe tried the same spot twice and still made it. Those are the stitches that hold a memory together, the little details you recall without recalling the score. By late in the second quarter, both teams started managing energy. You could feel them choosing when to sprint and when to breathe. That management is a veteran skill, and it matters on Christmas because the league wants the final minutes to be the brightest, the most worth remembering. Shaq's minutes had that steady dominance, but they also had a certain restraint. He didn't need to force everything. He could wait for good position. He could let the defense overreact. In a holiday showcase, restraint reads as confidence, and confidence reads as inevitability. Kobe's confidence looked different. It was less like inevitability and more like insistence. He wanted the audience to know he was still the center of the frame. He wanted the day to remember his shots, his footwork, his ability to bend a possession into his shape. That insistence can be exhausting on a random night. On Christmas, it becomes entertainment. It gives the viewer a simple question to hold. Will he hit the next one too? It's a question you can ask without being a fan. It's a question a room can share. The half ended without resolution, which was exactly what the league needed. A tradition-making game doesn't finish early. It keeps the door open. It makes you stay through halftime. It makes you glance at the schedule and realize there's still a whole second act ahead. When the buzzer for halftime sounded, it felt like a cliff edge. Not a huge one, just enough to keep the day tethered to the TV. People stood up, stretched, checked the oven, exchanged a few sentences, and then came back, as if returning was the natural thing to do. And that natural return is the secret. The NBA doesn't win Christmas by demanding attention. It wins by earning it in small pieces, and stacking those pieces until attention becomes habit. This game stacked quickly, and you could feel the habit forming in real time. On a holiday, habits are everything. You drink the same drink. You sit in the same chair. You call the same relatives. When the NBA places a meaningful matchup into that pattern, the matchup starts to feel like it belongs there, like it always belonged there. So the first half wasn't only basketball. It was a demonstration. It showed that a Christmas game could hold a broad audience, carry a clear storyline, and still feel smooth enough to fit beside food and family. It showed the league how to present itself as tradition. It also showed why basketball is uniquely suited to this role. The game is continuous, but it pauses often. It has a clock you can trust. It has a rhythm of possessions that keeps the mind gently engaged. For a day filled with stimulation, that gentle engagement is a gift. And if you were watching without deep knowledge, you still knew what mattered. You knew Shaq wanted to be seen. You knew Kobe wanted to answer. You knew both teams wanted to win. That clarity is the foundation of any iconic holiday memory. Because Christmas memories are rarely about details. They're about feelings. The warmth of the room, the hum of the television, the small rise in your chest when the crowd roars. This first half delivered that hum, and it promised something louder later. Now, Christmas slates are argued over like playoff brackets because viewers expect the league's best stories to arrive that day. The habit began when games felt special enough to hold the whole house, not just fans. When the first half ends and nobody drifts away, you can sense the tradition taking root. The room has decided the game belongs here, beside food and family, like a familiar song, year after year, quietly. Chapter 3. The Third Quarter Bridge. The third quarter is where a big game either relaxes or tightens. On Christmas, you can feel the room watching for the answer to a simple question. Is this going to be worth remembering? The second half began with that question hanging quietly in the air. Miami came out with a steady plan, the same one that had kept the first half readable. Touch the paint. Move the ball. Let Shaq's presence organize the floor. When a team plays this way, it turns the game into a sequence of small, sensible choices. and that calm can wear an opponent down. Los Angeles tried to disrupt the calm. They pushed the pace when they could. They tested Miami's transition defense. They looked for quick threes and early jumpers, the kind that can tilt a scoreboard before anyone has time to settle back into the couch. Those early shots did something important for the holiday audience. They made the game feel urgent without making it feel frantic. A made jumper is a clean jolt. A missed one is a clean reset. Basketball gives you repeated, gentle shocks, which is perfect for a day that's already emotionally busy. As the quarter developed, the matchup's emotional center shifted toward the guards. Shaq's touches still mattered, but the game's energy was changing. The space between bodies started to decide possessions. The ball moved a little faster. The decisions arrived a little sooner. This is where Wade's presence began to feel like a problem Los Angeles hadn't fully solved. He wasn't only fast, he was decisive. When he saw a seam, he went. When he saw help, he passed. His game didn't need extra dribbles, and on a big stage, that kind of directness feels fearless. Kobe answered with his own directness. He didn't try to be subtle about taking responsibility. He took the shots that asked the loudest questions. Can you stop me when you know I'm coming? That question is the oldest one in basketball, and it still works on Christmas audiences. The quarter turned into a conversation between these styles. Wade's attacks were like sudden doors opening. Kobe's jumpers were like doors he built himself. One looked like speed. The other looked like craft. Both looked like something worth talking about while you cleared the table. Coaches became more visible too. You could sense the small adjustments. A different defender, a quicker double, a new angle on a screen. These aren't things a casual viewer names, but the viewer feels them. The game shape changes, and the room senses the change even without language. There's a particular calm to a close game on a holiday. Nobody in the room is truly alone with it. If you get nervous, someone else is laughing. If you cheer, someone else rolls their eyes. The shared space softens the tension, which makes the tension easier to enjoy. On the court, that enjoyment showed up in the little flourishes. A pass delivered a beat earlier than expected. A defender reaching for a steal and missing by inches. A rebound tipped to a teammate instead of grabbed. These are small events, but they make the game feel alive. Miami's role players began to matter in this stretch because Christmas games are often won on the margins. A single extra rotation, a single extra box out, a single open corner jumper. When the stars are evenly matched, the supporting cast becomes the quiet difference. The Lakers' supporting cast had its own task. Keep the floor spaced enough for Kobe to work without crowds swallowing him. Spacing is invisible when it's good, and obvious when it's bad. In the third quarter, you could see Los Angeles searching for the version that felt cleanest. Each time the Lakers found that clean spacing, Kobe looked lighter, almost playful. A jab step, a rise, a soft release. Each time Miami crowded him, the game looked heavier again, as if every shot required more force. That push and pull kept the quarter unpredictable. Shaq's touches in this period felt like punctuation. Not every possession ended with him, but when he did get deep position, the defense had to respond with urgency. The urgency created the kickouts and the cuts that made Miami's offense feel like a system rather than a solo act. Systems are comforting on Christmas. They remind you that order exists. Even if your living room is messy and the day is loud, the game can still present something organized. Miami's half-court sets did that. They gave the quarter a steady heartbeat. Los Angeles countered with creativity, and creativity has its own comfort. It suggests possibility. It suggests that no matter how tight the moment is, someone can still make something from nothing. Kobe embodied that, and the crowd responded as if they were watching a magician repeat a familiar trick. Timeouts became small intermissions inside the intermission. The broadcast cut to the benches, to coaches drawing lines, to players sipping water. At home, those pauses gave people permission to move again. to stand, to stretch, to check on the oven, and then to return before the ball was inbounded. That return is the rhythm of Christmas viewing. You don't watch in one uninterrupted stare. You watch in waves. Basketball's structure quarters, whistles, dead balls, supports that wave-like attention. It doesn't punish you for living your life around it. Still, certain possessions demanded full focus. A late clock isolation, a post-up with bodies leaning hard, a drive where the help defender had to choose between a dunk and an open three. Those are the possessions that make a room stop talking, because the outcome feels immediate. The third quarter offered several of those possessions in a row, and that's when the game began to feel like a classic. Not because of one highlight, but because of accumulation. Tension stacking on tension, each one resolved, just enough to allow the next one to build. And with each stack, the league's Christmas identity became clearer. This wasn't just games on a holiday. This was the holiday game. The idea that the NBA could own a portion of December 25th, the way certain songs own radio, stations and certain movies own family rooms. That feeling is crucial for a tradition-making game. If the second half looks identical to the first, the memory blurs. But if the second half shifts, if the energy reorganizes, the mind wakes up a little. The day's softness gets a small edge, and the edge makes it memorable. Miami's steadiness kept the game from spiraling. Even when Los Angeles made a run, Miami's possessions still had purpose. A post touch, a cut, a kick-out, a free throw. Those are the ingredients of calm pressure, and calm pressure is easier to live with on a holiday. Los Angeles, meanwhile, leaned on shot creation. When an offense becomes shot creation, it can look heroic or desperate depending on the makes. Kobe walked that line, and he did it with the confidence of someone who trusts his routine. Routine on Christmas is almost sacred. Somewhere in the middle of the third, the crowd began reacting a fraction earlier. Before a drive finished, the sound rose. Before a jumper fell, the arena held its breath. When a crowd starts anticipating instead of merely responding, the game has crossed into a different level of attention. At home, anticipation looks like stillness. It looks like fewer conversations. It looks like people choosing to watch instead of choosing to multitask. That choice is rare on a day built for multitasking, and it's exactly what the NBA hopes for when it schedules a showcase. The quarter's most important work might have been emotional rather than numerical. It reminded viewers that this wasn't just a reunion storyline. It was a real contest between teams that wanted something real. It made the holiday broadcast feel earned rather than staged, and that distinction matters. A staged moment is fun, but it fades. An earned moment stays because it feels like truth. On Christmas, people are already surrounded by rituals that feel true. A game that feels true can slip into those rituals and survive there. As possessions tightened, you could feel the players measuring each other. A hard foul here, a stare there, a brief exchange at the free throw line. Nothing too loud, but enough to signal that pride was involved. Pride is another universal storyline. Anyone can recognize it. The scoreboard stayed close enough to keep the stakes clear. If the game had turned into a blowout, the tradition might have dimmed. But a close game keeps the room engaged. It invites the room to take sides. It invites the room to argue gently and laugh and stay awake. Basketball is unusually good at inviting that kind of argument because the action is continuous. There's always another possession coming, another whistle, another chance to be right. On Christmas, that continuity provides a safe, steady distraction from whatever else the day carries. The third quarter also highlighted something subtle about holiday sports. People don't only want greatness, they want context. They want to know why this matters today. Shaq versus Kobe was context. Wade's rise was context. The Lakers' identity crisis was context. When you have context, every basket feels heavier. A simple hook shot becomes a statement. A fast break layup becomes an answer. The game becomes more than points. It becomes language, and the room can understand that language without translating it into analysis. As the quarter approached its end, the game felt like it was gathering itself for a final act. The players' movements were still smooth, but the pauses between them felt more meaningful. A timeout lasted longer. A free throw felt quieter. The day leaned in with the game. And in that leaning in, you can hear the birth of a holiday habit. Not a habit of fandom, necessarily, but a habit of attention. The idea that on December 25th, the NBA will give you something you can share, something that doesn't require explanation, something that fits beside everything else. Even after decades of holiday sports, there's something uniquely NBA about this kind of third quarter. The game keeps moving, but it also keeps offering places to breathe. It invites you to watch deeply for a minute, then let your attention drift, then come back right when it matters again. That is why the third quarter matters in the memory of a Christmas classic. It's the bridge between story and outcome. It's where the narrative becomes basketball again. And on this day, basketball becoming itself is what makes the event feel trustworthy. By the time the final horn of the quarter sounded, you could sense the room's emotional inventory. People had chosen favorites. They had chosen villains. They had chosen phrases to repeat later. They decided this was the kind of game you mention when someone asks how your Christmas was. And now the game had one job left: deliver a finish that matched the build. Not a miracle, not chaos. Just a finish with enough tension to stitch itself into the holiday, so that next year, when the schedule drops, people will look for that same feeling again. In today's NBA, the third quarter swing is a social media ritual on Christmas clips, reactions, quick hot takes. The habit traces back to games that tightened after halftime, proving the day could still deliver real competitive tension. A tradition doesn't need fireworks every minute. It needs a stretch where the whole house leans in together, then exhales together. That third quarter bridge is where the holiday becomes an event, and the event becomes something you expect. Chapter 4. The fourth quarter quiet. The fourth quarter on Christmas has a different kind of silence around it. The day has already happened. Gifts opened, food eaten, calls made. What remains is the slow evening, and the game becomes the cleanest thing in it: a clock, a score, a clear finish ahead. The teams entered that quarter with the posture of people who understood the stage. No one was laughing now. Every decision looked slightly heavier. The ball was held a fraction longer before each pass. The floor spacing mattered more. The camera found faces that had stopped pretending. Miami kept returning to its foundation: a deep touch, a strong seal, a simple read. When the game tightens, simplicity becomes valuable because it leaves less room for mistakes. Shaq's presence offered that simplicity: a place to begin each possession, a reason defenses had to react early. But the Lakers were built to survive tight moments through shot making. A jumper doesn't require a perfect angle. It requires confidence and repetition. Kobe gave them that, and he did it with an almost quiet stubbornness, like a person refusing to let the day end on anyone else's terms. In the first minutes of the fourth, you could see both teams testing where the pressure would break. Miami wanted to make the Lakers feel bodies in the paint. The Lakers wanted to make Miami chase shooters and guard space. The battle wasn't loud, but it was constant. Constant battles are perfect for a sleep doc tone because they don't spike your heart. They keep it gently engaged. You watch the same question asked in different ways. Can the defense hold? Can the offense find one clean look? Can the star deliver one more answer? One reason the fourth quarter works so well on Christmas is that it arrives after the day's busiest parts. The kitchen finally slows down. The phone calls thin out. The house settles. The game meets the home at the exact moment the home is ready to sit still. In that stillness, every sound from the broadcast becomes clearer. The squeak of shoes, the thump of a dribble, the brief pause before a free throw. Those sounds are almost meditative. They turn competition into rhythm. And rhythm is one of the easiest ways to keep people watching quietly. Miami leaned into that rhythm by taking good shots rather than quick shots. They looked for touches that forced the defense to make a choice. If the defense sent help, the ball moved. If the defense stayed home, the big man finished. Simple options, repeated calmly. Los Angeles tried to break the rhythm with quick strikes, a push after a miss, a jumper before the defense was set, a drive that collapsed the floor and created an open look. Quick strikes are a classic way to steal a quarter, and the Lakers chased those steals like they were part of the holiday gift list. The referee's whistles, in this stretch, carried extra weight. Each stoppage felt like a small reset button, and each reset gave the stars another chance to take center stage. On Christmas, viewers accept stoppages because stoppages create suspense without creating confusion. Suspense also lives in substitutions. A coach chooses a lineup and, with that choice, chooses a philosophy. Do you go bigger for rebounds or smaller for speed? Do you trust a shooter who might miss or a defender who might not score? These choices are invisible drama, and they matter more late. Miami's lineup choices reflected trust and structure. Keep the floor spaced enough for drives. Keep enough size to protect the paint. Keep enough calm to survive a bad bounce. Los Angeles choices lean toward creation. Put the ball with the people who can make something when nothing is open. That difference created distinct moods on consecutive possessions. One possession looked like a plan. The next looked like improvisation. The contrast made the quarter feel like two different games stitched together, and stitched well enough that you could follow both without strain. At home, that meant everyone had something to point to. The strategy-minded person could talk about the post touches. The highlight-minded person could talk about the jumpers. The casual viewer could talk about how tense it felt. The game offered entry points for every kind of attention. Those entry points are exactly what makes Christmas basketball stick. A tradition survives when it welcomes newcomers. This game welcomed newcomers through story, through clear roles, and through a fourth quarter that never asked you to understand more than the clock and the moment. The clock, especially, becomes a holiday object in late moments. You watch it the way you watch the oven timer. You watch it the way you watch the countdown to midnight on New Year's. It gives the room a shared measurement of time, and shared time is the heart of any holiday ritual. As the minutes fell away, the player's breath became more visible. Hands on knees during dead balls, a long exhale before an inbound, a brief nod between teammates. These small human details make a televised game feel intimate, and intimacy is what a holiday audience responds to most. And even when the possession ended in something ordinary, a miss, a foul, a rebound, the quarter still felt dramatic, because the stakes were attached to names. Shaq, Kobe, Wade. On Christmas, those names were enough to keep the story alive until the last possession arrived. The crowd's energy shifted from celebration to judgment. Each whistle was met with a quick reaction, not playful, but opinionated. Each call felt like it could tilt the game. On Christmas, that opinionated crowd energy travels through the screen and into living rooms almost instantly. In those living rooms, people began speaking in shorter sentences. That's a foul. No way. He's hot. These aren't analyses. They're shared signals. They tell everyone in the room what the room is feeling. Shared signals are how groups become audiences. And once a group becomes an audience, it becomes easier for the NBA to become tradition. The league isn't competing with Christmas when the room is already unified. It's simply providing a center point, a place for attention to gather and rest. Miami's composure was key. A holiday game can turn sloppy if emotions take over. But Miami's offense kept finding calm outcomes. A free throw, a close finish, a clean kickout. Those outcomes didn't always feel spectacular, but they felt dependable, and dependable is a holiday virtue. On defense, Miami tried to make Kobe's life hard without making it theatrical. They crowded him, nudged him, forced him into tougher angles. Yet Kobe's gift was turning tough angles into normal ones. He'd rise from a spot that looked uncomfortable and make it look familiar. Shaq's minutes remained the game's anchor points. When he was on the floor, the paint belonged to him in some quiet way, even on possessions where he didn't score. He changed where help defenders stood. He changed how guards attacked. He changed the shape of the court. That shape-making is hard to explain to casual viewers, but it's easy to feel. The game looks different when a dominant center is present. It looks more physical, more grounded. On Christmas, that grounding helps the broadcast feel substantial, like a real event, not a novelty. Still, the Lakers kept finding air. A quick swing pass, a jumper that snapped the net, a stop that led to an easy finish. These small bursts made the game feel like it was breathing. It would tighten, then loosen, then tighten again, like a calm heart under pressure. With each exchange, the finish became more inevitable. Not inevitable in the sense of knowing who would win, but inevitable in the sense of knowing the game would demand a final sequence, a set of possessions that everyone would remember, because everyone had stayed for them. And staying is its own victory on Christmas. The days full of exits, people leaving to nap, leaving to visit relatives, leaving to clean up. A game that makes you stay becomes part of the day's structure. It turns into the thing you do between the other things. In the arena, you could see fans standing a little more often, not because they were restless, but because they wanted to be ready for whatever happened next. Standing is a way of saying, without words, that you've committed. The room at home commits the same way, with silence. That shared silence is a rare gift. It means the holiday noise is paused, and everyone is simply present together, for a moment longer, looking at the same moving story. When a game can create that pause on Christmas, it earns its place in the calendar, permanently. The broadcast helped by keeping the moment clean. It didn't clutter the screen with noise. It let the camera breathe on the players' faces. It let the crowd sound rise naturally. It let the suspense build without forcing it. On a holiday, restraint reads as respect. Minutes passed, then suddenly there weren't many minutes left. That realization is always strange. You've been watching for a while, but the end arrives like a soft door closing. On Christmas, the soft door feels even softer, because the day is already about endings and beginnings. The game began to narrow toward two questions. Can Miami's inside strength hold? And can Los Angeles shot-making steal it? Those questions are simple enough to hold without effort. They are also the kind of questions that keep you awake in a pleasant way. Pleasant wakefulness is what the NBA sells on Christmas. Not the adrenaline of a playoff elimination, but the gentle excitement of a meaningful contest. You can watch it and still feel relaxed. You can watch it and still feel like you are part of a shared moment. As the quarter moved deeper, every possession looked like a small story. A post touch that drew help. A rotation that arrived late. A jumper that bailed out a possession. A rebound that mattered more than it should have. These micro-stories are how the mind stores a game. And because the holiday audience is broad, the micro-stories need to be clear. This game kept them clear. It didn't hide its drama in complicated schemes. It put its drama in obvious places, in the paint, on the perimeter, in the hands of stars, under the pressure of the clock. The stars accepted that responsibility. They didn't shrink from it. That's a key ingredient of an iconic Christmas game. The biggest names play like they understand the assignment. They don't treat the day like a day off. They treat it like a stage. By the time the clock dipped into the final stretch, the room, both the arena room and the living room, had a shared posture. Lean forward. Pay attention. Let the day pause. This is the part you'll mention later. The part that turns a game into a memory. And when a game becomes a memory on Christmas, it becomes something else too. It becomes a promise that the league can keep. Next year, the schedule can offer another promise. The year after that, another. Eventually, The promise itself feels like tradition. Today, late-game Christmas minutes become instant clips. A look from a star, a defensive stop, the free throws that decide it. The tradition survives because those minutes feel like shared television, quiet, tense, and easy to gather around again. When the fourth quarter arrives and the whole house goes quiet, the league has already won something. The finish might belong to one team, but the stillness belongs to everyone watching, together, like it's part of the holiday. Chapter 5. The finish that stays in the air. The last few minutes of a close Christmas game feel like a small ceremony. Everyone has agreed, without speaking, to give the moment their attention. The day's distractions step back. The room becomes a single audience, waiting for the final sequence to write itself. On the floor, you can see that agreement in the way players move. No wasted steps, no casual passes. Everything is angled toward the rim and the clock. The ball feels heavier, and the decisions feel sharper, because the margin for error has narrowed to almost nothing. Miami kept looking for outcomes that could survive pressure. A strong touch inside, a drive that drew contact, a possession that ended with free throws instead of a rushed jumper. These are the choices of a team that wants the game to be decided slowly, not suddenly. Los Angeles wanted the opposite. They wanted a sudden answer, a made jumper that flips the mood in an instant, a quick stop that turns into a fast score. When you trail or when the game is tight, suddenness feels like power, and the Lakers chased that power through their best creator. Kobe's late-game possessions carried that familiar mix of calm and defiance. He would isolate, measure, rise, and release. The defense could contest, but contesting didn't always change the outcome. On Christmas, that kind of shot feels like a gift to the broadcast. Clean drama, clean visuals. Yet the game wasn't only Kobe versus Miami. It was also Miami versus its own nerves. Every team feels the pressure of a big stage. On Christmas, the pressure is unusual because the audience is bigger and more casual. You aren't only performing for fans. You're performing for families. Miami responded by leaning on routine. Routine travels well under pressure. Shaq's post work was routine. The entry passes were routine. The cuts were routine. Even the free throw walks were routine. In a moment when everything could feel shaky, routine is a stabilizer. The stabilizer matters because late-game basketball can become messy. Players overthink. Coaches overreact. The ball sticks. But this game stayed relatively clean. It kept offering readable possessions, which kept the tension enjoyable rather than exhausting. It stayed inside the holiday lane. As the clock slipped downward, each possession became a small referendum on identity. Could Miami win with its new center and its new partnership? Could the Lakers prove their story still belonged to them? Could Kobe carry the day without the old version of the team beside him? Those questions were bigger than the score, and that's why the moment mattered. A Christmas classic isn't only a close finish. It's a finish that feels like an answer to something people have been talking about. This game had been talked about before it started, and now it needed to speak back. The arena's sound became more concentrated. Less cheering for the sake of cheering, more reacting to each swing. A made basket sounded like relief. A missed basket sounded like frustration. The crowd wasn't only watching. It was negotiating its feelings about the players on the floor. At home, the negotiation looked gentler. Someone cheered for Kobe out of habit. Someone rooted for Shaq out of sympathy. Someone liked Wade's speed. Someone just wanted the game to stay close. The beauty of a Christmas audience is that it contains many reasons to care at once. Late-game possessions also reveal the smallest roles. A screen set at the right time, a rebound tipped away, a defender staying disciplined and not fouling. These roles rarely make headlines, but they decide outcomes. In an iconic game, the small roles get absorbed into the larger memory. One of the clearest sounds in late moments is the bounce of the ball at the free throw line. It's slow, spaced out, almost like a metronome. The crowd quiets. The shooter breathes. The room at home quiets too, because everyone knows this is a place where games slip away. In those free throw silences, the holiday feels especially close. You hear someone in the kitchen. You hear a chair creak. You hear the commentator lower his voice. The sport becomes less like a show and more like a shared pause, a collective listening moment wrapped around a simple shot. Miami benefited from those pauses because it could reset. When a possession ended with free throws, the next possession began on defense with everyone set. That reduced the Lakers' chances to score quickly, and quick scoring was the Lakers' most natural way to swing momentum late. But the Lakers kept hunting chances anyway. A long rebound that turns into a push. A quick inbound that catches a defender leaning. A pass ahead that forces Miami to decide between stopping the ball and protecting the rim. These are the small chaos moments that make close finishes feel alive. Each time chaos threatened, Miami tried to return the game to its preferred shape. Slow the action. Touch the paint. Make the defense collapse. Force a whistle or a high percentage look. This is not always pretty, but it is often effective, and effectiveness reads as composure on television. Kobe's response to composure was aggression. He wanted to take the decision away from everyone else. That's what isolation basketball does. It concentrates responsibility. On Christmas, concentrated responsibility is dramatic because the audience can focus on one face and one choice. Defenders understand that drama too. They don't want to be the person on the highlight. They don't want to foul. They don't want to give space. So they play tight, and tight defense creates even tighter shots. And tight shots makes feel miraculous, even when they're routine for a star. This is also where trust shows itself. A teammate cuts hard because he believes the pass will come. A shooter stays ready because he believes the kickout will arrive. A big man seals because he believes the guard will see him. Trust is quiet, but in a close game it becomes visible. Miami's trust centered on getting Shaq the ball in meaningful spots. Not every touch had to end in a score. Sometimes, the touch was simply a way to organize the floor, to draw defenders into predictable places, to open lanes for a guard to slip through at exactly the right moment. Los Angeles' trust centered on Kobe's ability to manufacture a look. That can be risky, but it also gives a team clarity. When the play breaks down, you still know what to do. Give it to the creator. Clear the side. Live with the result. Clarity is a comforting thing late. As the clock tightened, that clarity became the emotional core of the broadcast. You could sense the commentary leaning into it, not with hype, but with focus. The camera lingered a fraction longer on Kobe's eyes, on Shaq's shoulders, on Wade's quick steps. The story was in their bodies. Fans often remember Christmas classics as if they were one long highlight, but the reality is slower. It's small advantages, small mistakes, small recoveries, a good closeout, a bad switch, a contested rebound. These details are too subtle to summarize later, but they create the feeling you remember. That feeling is what the NBA needs. It doesn't need everyone to memorize the box score. It needs them to remember that Christmas basketball can feel important. It needs them to remember a moment when the room got quiet, when the holiday briefly became a game, and the game felt like a holiday. The final possessions carried that weight, and you could see it in the way players held the ball a beat longer, as if they were listening to the clock. Time becomes almost physical late. It presses on the shoulders. It narrows the vision. It asks the simplest question, what will you do now? And when the answer arrived, whatever the exact sequence of makes, misses, whistles, and rebounds, it arrived with the satisfaction of closure. The day got to keep its calm, and the game got to keep its drama. That balance is what makes a Christmas finish rewatchable year after year. Miami's defense tried to keep the Lakers' actions predictable. Force the ball to spots that are slightly less comfortable. Contest without reaching. Rebound without giving second chances. Those are quiet goals, But quiet goals win close games, and close games are what build tradition. Los Angeles kept trying to unlock a single moment that would tilt everything. A steal, a stop, a three, something that would make the crowd gasp. Basketball is always one possession away from a gasp, and that possibility makes late game minutes feel like they're glowing. As the final sequence approached, you could sense the coaches tightening the game into its simplest forms. Fewer options, clearer roles, a set play to start a possession, a familiar action to end it. Simplicity becomes a language everyone can speak, which is helpful for a wide holiday audience. Then the game reached the point where every whistle becomes a little sermon about time. Timeouts extend time. Free throws extend time. Reviews extend time. On Christmas, extending time can feel comforting because it delays the end of both the game and the day's busiest energy. Somewhere in that extended time, the game offered its defining images. A star holding the ball and looking at the clock. A defender crouched low, ready for a drive. A teammate clapping, trying to steady the moment. These images are why Christmas games replay well in memory. And even if you don't remember the exact sequence later, you remember the posture. Lean forward. Hold your breath. Exhale when the ball drops through the net. Those bodily cues become part of your holiday archive, filed beside other small cues like the smell of food or the sound of wrapping paper. In the end, the game produced the kind of finish that doesn't need exaggeration. It was close. It was contested. It required composure. One side executed slightly better when it mattered. That slight difference was enough, and it was enough because the stage was so clear. The aftermath was immediate but gentle. The losing side showed frustration. The winning side showed relief. The broadcast showed handshakes and brief words. There was no need for fireworks. On Christmas, a clean resolution is satisfying. The day likes conclusions that don't shout. And that is the hidden reason this game helped lock in the tradition. It gave the league a holiday product that felt meaningful without feeling exhausting. It gave viewers a story that ended with a clear result. It gave families a shared moment that fit inside the day's rhythm. After the final horn, people didn't rush away from the TV. They stayed for a minute as if savoring the last taste of something sweet. Then they returned to their lives, dessert, cleanup, quiet conversation, with the sense that the holiday had contained a real event. After games like this, the league doesn't have to convince anyone that Christmas belongs to basketball for a few hours. The day remembers on its own, and memory is stronger than marketing. A real event is what becomes a tradition, not because it is repeated, but because it is worth repeating. This finish felt worth repeating. It offered tension, names, and a satisfying arc, all delivered in the calm tempo that Christmas households can actually carry. On modern Christmas days, the final 2 minutes often become the clip everyone shares, even non-fans. The league learned that a close finish can turn a regular season game into a holiday memory for years. When the horn sounds and the house exhales, the day feels neatly stitched together. The game didn't interrupt Christmas. It completed a piece of it, giving everyone a shared ending to carry into the evening. Chapter 6. How the tradition locked in. After a game like this, the holiday doesn't immediately change. The house still looks the same. The plates still need washing. The night still settles. But something shifts in the way people remember the day, because the day now has a sports memory attached to it. That attachment is the beginning of tradition. A tradition is simply a repeated association that feels pleasant. You experience it once, and then you look for it again. You don't need to explain why. You just want the same feeling, the same hum, the same shared attention. The NBA had been playing Christmas games for a long time, but the modern version of the tradition needed a certain kind of proof. It needed a game that felt like a headline, with stars who were already famous in storylines that didn't require a long explanation. This matchup provided that proof because it was built from obvious elements. A superstar in a new uniform facing his old team. Another superstar trying to defend his identity. A young rising star adding speed and surprise. Even if you were only half watching, you could understand the stakes. Understanding the stakes is what allows a casual viewer to become part of the audience. The viewer doesn't feel lost. The viewer feels included. Inclusion is essential on Christmas because the audience is not only the sports fan who chose to watch. It's the whole room that happened to be there. The whole room also happens to be in a reflective mood. Christmas invites reflection. It invites people to look backward and forward at the same time. Sports narratives fit that emotional shape because sports is always about what happened before and what might happen next. So when the NBA offers a storyline that mirrors that shape, return and departure, legacy and future, it doesn't feel like an intrusion. It feels like an extension. The game becomes another way to process the day, another safe conversation topic, another shared reference point. That matters more than any rating number. Ratings measure attention, but tradition measures expectation. Once a viewer expects basketball on Christmas, the viewer begins building the day around it. The TV turns on earlier. The schedule is checked. The matchups are debated. You can see that expectation forming in what happens after the game ends. People don't only say, "Good game." They say, "That was a great Christmas game." They file it under the holiday itself, not under the week's sports calendar. That filing is the key. The league, of course, noticed. It learned that Christmas didn't need to be treated like a normal day. It could be treated like an event day, a showcase day, a day where the NBA curates its product for a broad audience and lets the stories do the work. Over time, that curation became more ambitious. More games, more stars, more rivalry energy. The slate turned into a ladder of attention. Early games for a gentle start, midday games for the busy hours, late games for the quiet evening when the house is finally still. At a larger level, Christmas became the NBA's answer to another American sports ritual. Football has Thanksgiving, a day where games feel as natural as the meal. Basketball needed its own holiday anchor, and Christmas offered a window that matched the sport's indoor rhythm. An indoor sport pairs naturally with winter. The court looks bright against the darker season. The arenas feel warm. The TV presentation feels cozy. Even if you don't think about it consciously, your body understands the logic. When it's cold outside, a bright court is inviting. The league also understood that Christmas is a day of lists. People make lists of gifts, lists of food, lists of who called and who didn't. The NBA's schedule turns into another list. Which matchups, which stars, which games should be on while you eat, which one should be on while you rest. Once the schedule becomes a list people discuss, it becomes culture. You see it on group chats and social media. You hear it in casual conversations. Did you see the matchups? Becomes as normal as, did you travel? The games turn into a small seasonal language. This language works best when the league treats the day like a showcase of identities. Not just teams, but styles. One game might be defense-heavy and physical. Another might be fast and modern. Another might be a rivalry with history. The variety lets different viewers find their comfort. Yet variety needs an anchor, and the anchor is always story. The NBA stars are the league's storytellers. Their careers create arcs you can follow without effort. The young star rising, the veteran trying to hold on, the former teammate facing an old partner, the contender proving itself. Christmas is perfect for arcs because people are already thinking in arcs, last year versus this year, childhood versus adulthood, old traditions versus new ones. The sports narratives blend into that seasonal thinking, and the games feel like chapters in a longer family calendar. The blending is also why the league's presentation on Christmas tends to be cleaner and more polished. The graphics are crisp. The introductions are longer. The broadcast treats the moment with a little more ceremony. Ceremony signals importance. and important signals that you should keep watching. But ceremony can't do the whole job. If the game is sloppy, the room will drift away. What makes a game like this so valuable is that it gives ceremony something to attach to. It proves the league can deliver both story and quality, and that proof becomes a selling point for future years. The league then repeats the pattern with new characters. A rematch that feels like revenge. A rookie announcing himself. A dynasty trying to defend its place. The details change, but the day's promise stays the same. You'll get something worth watching, even if you aren't a nightly viewer. In that way, Christmas basketball becomes a bridge between diehards and casuals. The diehard gets meaningful competition. The casual gets an accessible story. The family room gets a shared topic that doesn't require anyone to reveal too much about their mood. And mood matters on Christmas. Some people are joyful. Some people are tired. Some people are lonely. Sports offers a neutral space where you can participate without explaining your inner life. You can celebrate a shot. You can complain about a whistle. You can simply watch and breathe. This neutrality is part of why the NBA's Christmas tradition doesn't feel heavy. It doesn't ask you to feel one specific way. It simply offers a steady event that can hold whatever feelings the day brings. The game becomes a container, and containers are useful on holidays. Once you see the day that way, you understand why a single iconic game can matter so much. It isn't just entertainment. It's a demonstration that the container works. If the container works once, it can work again. And if it works again and again, it becomes a ritual. Rituals are built from repetition, but also from trust. The audience trusts the league to choose compelling matchups. The league trusts its stars to show up. The network trusts the day to deliver viewers. Each year the trust is tested, and each year it grows when the games are good. This 2004 showcase helped that trust grow because it felt like a clean, modern story told through real competition. It gave the holiday audience a reason to treat the NBA as part of the season, not as an optional extra. It made the day feel complete with basketball included. But the foundation remained the same as it was here. A Christmas game works when it is easy to enter and hard to ignore. Easy to enter means the story is clear. Hard to ignore means the contest is real. The league can't fake that contest. The players have to bring it. This game suggested the players would bring it if the stage was worthy. That is a subtle achievement. Regular season games can be uneven because the season is long. But on Christmas, the stage itself can serve as motivation, a reminder that the league is being watched by everyone. Everyone includes the casual viewer who might only watch on holidays. That viewer is valuable because they bring the sport into places it doesn't usually go. Into family rooms where basketball is not an everyday habit. Into conversations where sports is not usually the main topic. Once basketball enters those rooms, it gains a foothold. Even if it's only for one day a year, it becomes part of the holiday's soundscape. The squeak of shoes becomes as familiar as a holiday playlist. The announcer's voice becomes part of the season's texture. And the NBA is uniquely suited to be soundscape because it is continuous without being relentless. It pauses often enough to let life happen around it. It offers peaks of drama without requiring hours of patience. It fits into the way Christmas actually unfolds. That fit is why certain Christmas games become reference points. Years later, people will say, "Remember that Christmas game?" And the room will know which one they mean. They might not recall the score. They might not recall the exact plays. But they recall the feeling. The feeling is the real product. A calm afternoon turning into a shared moment. A storyline becoming a contest becoming a memory, and a memory becoming an expectation. That chain is how sports becomes tradition, and tradition is how the NBA claims a piece of the calendar. This particular game also offered a lesson in balance. The story was personal, but the basketball stayed primary. The intensity was real, but it didn't become ugly. The finish was tense, but the night still felt calm afterward. That balance is perfect for a holiday audience. Once the league saw that balance, it could repeat it with different characters, different rivalries, different eras. But the template stayed. Give the day a big story, present it cleanly, let the players compete, and let the home audience feel included without being overwhelmed. Now, when people talk about Christmas basketball, they don't talk about it like a random programming choice. They talk about it like a tradition that always existed. That's how you know the league succeeded. The choice becomes invisible because it feels inevitable. And inevitability is the final form of tradition. When the games arrive each December, they arrive with the weight of expectation, the same way certain foods arrive and certain songs arrive. You don't ask if they will be there. You simply ask which version you're getting this year. So the legacy of a tradition-making game isn't only the memories it produced, it's the habits it created. It taught viewers to look for the schedule. It taught families to leave the TV on. It taught the league to treat Christmas like a stage that can carry its best stories. And that stage continues quietly, year after year. A screen on, a game humming, people drifting in and out. And then, without noticing, everyone is watching the same moment together. That is how the NBA locks in a tradition, not by competing with Christmas, but by fitting inside it. Today, the NBA's Christmas slate is treated like a holiday menu, announced, debated, and bookmarked. That expectation exists because past classics proved the league could deliver a shared, low-effort event inside the day. When the lights dim and the house settles, the memory of the game stays gentle, like a warm aftertaste. You don't remember every detail. You remember that it fit, and you look for it again next year. After this kind of Christmas game, you stop treating the schedule like background. You start treating it like part of the day's plan, the rivalry, the stars, the finish. All of it leaves a simple thought behind. Next year, I want this feeling again. And that's why Christmas Day belongs to the NBA. Not because every matchup becomes a classic, but because the league learned how to fit inside the holiday without fighting it. One calm afternoon, one shared living room, one close finish at a time. If you want more calm sports stories like this, subscribe to Sideline Slumber and leave a comment with the Christmas game you'll never forget.